How's it going? I'm Bubba Beasley, a geologist from Virginia, and I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to give a quick introduction to geophysical mapping for viticulture. These are some techniques and approaches that I've been developing for the past few years that work extremely well for mapping vineyard site variability, soil and geology variability as it applies to vine health and wine quality. The technique that I use the most is called electromagnetic induction, or EM mapping. The instrument itself is attached to a field computer with a GPS antenna, and you can basically collect soils data as fast as the field worker can walk. Now, the data that you collect with the instrument are related to soil electrical properties. So you are essentially creating a map of soil electrical conductivity. Now, these readings can be affected by a number of soil parameters, including clay content, moisture content, rockiness, salinity, mineralogy, topsoil thickness, just to name a few, which is why ground truthing is so essential. Two identical readings and one site can mean completely different things geologically. Here's a map showing variable clay content. The pink areas represent high clay. The blue areas represent sandier areas. This is an example of a site where we identified some wet weather springs in the middle of summer. So the ground surface was dry, but the EM was able to map these subsurface springs, which have been a major headache for the grower over the years. This is an example of a site where we mapped cation exchange capacity. So the hot colors, or the pinks and reds, represent high CEC areas, and the blues and light greens represent low CEC areas. This is a good example of why ground truth information is so critical, because you can see the shallow bedrock in the left image is represented by red and pink colors, high conductivity. Shallow bedrock in the right image is represented by blue colors. So you really do have to have a handle on site geology, and you absolutely have to collect ground truth information after running these surveys. Ground truthing is essential. I try to get a backhoe out on every site, and of course use the EM maps to decide where to dig the backhoe pits. And then I make observations of the soil profile in situ. This is an example backhoe pit log from one of my sites. I call this capital T truth. You cannot argue with what you see in a backhoe pit. So we use this information to inform our interpretations of the EM maps. I also use hand augers to sort of extend ground truth coverage. And sometimes it's not feasible to get a backhoe out on site, but backhoes are preferred. Let's look at a couple of examples of some sites where we are applying this technology. This is a new vineyard site in Northern Virginia. Here's one of my EM maps showing obvious variability. First, we're going to zoom in and take a look at a picture of pit 4, which is located in this high conductivity zone. You can see that it corresponds with a thick clay layer, as you can see here. In contrast, let's zoom in on pit 9, which is in this low conductivity zone, and you can see completely different conditions subsurface. We've got fractured greenstone, shallow soil. So this is the kind of variability that we image. And the grower is using my maps to help set up his new planting. You know, we've got a zone of high clay here, We've got some pockets of really, really rocky, dry soil, and you cannot see this from the ground surface. And so we're using this for variety placement, rootstock selection, what have you. Here's another example of a highly variable survey. And what we did was we created different management zones that we actually ranked based on plant available water. Now, obviously, the soil variability doesn't follow perfectly straight lines. That would be nice because our vineyard rows are perfectly straight lines. So what we do is, I work with the growers to define geometrically shaped management zones that can be incorporated into the vineyard management plan and the vineyard management design. So here you can see the different ranked management zones ranked on increasing plant available water. Now, how does it all tie into wine quality? Well, it's widely known that soil directly influences wine quality, but with all this EM mapping being a fairly new approach, I have felt like I really needed some hard data. So what you're looking at here is a 10-acre EM survey at one of my research sites in Central Virginia. Within this 10-acre block, we have 3 acres of Cabernet Franc, which we're using as our study block. This Cab Franc is all the same rootstock, same clone, same viticultural practices. The only difference is the soil. So within this area, we've got 2 distinct soil zones, a high conductivity soil, which represents a high clay soil, and a low conductivity zone, which is the sandy clay loam with gravels. We have implemented a differential harvest at this site 3 years in a row and consistently see the same differences from each soil zone. So what we do is we harvest the fruit from each zone separately. The winemaker makes separate lots of wine based on the soil zones. And we consistently see that the low conductivity zone is producing wines with darker color, more ruby color, and better pH. The high conductivity wines coming from the clay soil have higher pH and poorer color retention. This is a slide just sort of summarizing the data that we have from this site. Every year we consistently have the same results 3 years in a row, with the low conductivity soil having better color, better pH, lower vigor than the high conductivity soil. One thing I will point out is that the sugar levels are essentially the same. So we're looking at even ripeness across the block. It's really just a wine quality issue that we're observing here. So that's a quick little overview of one of the main services that I offer my vineyard clients. If you have any questions, please give me a shout. Or if you want to collaborate on projects, I'm always looking for new opportunities, and I'm always looking to meet folks who are interested in precision viticulture, soils, wine quality. Thanks for listening.